Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear audience, dear panelists, thank you for your interest in the last panel, and thank you for being with us until the end of the conference. I would like to start the last discussion, which is about the future of Europe. Basically, many things have already been said in the previous panels about the future of Europe, about the present of Europe, about many different things that have shaped Europe in the past. Before we start, I would like to shortly introduce my panelists. We have here among us Professor Ihor Zhaloba, who is a historian from Czernowitz in Ukraine. After teaching in Czernowitz, he moved to Kiev, where he was professor at private and state universities. 2 years ago, when he was working at the Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine, he became the founding president of the Paneuropa Ukraine. He is professor currently, as far as I know, at Boris Hryshchenko University, Kiev. And he's also a member in the Austrian-Ukrainian Historian Commission. But please add anything that you feel like missing. We also have here Lucia Mokrá, who is a political scientist and lawyer. She is currently serving as Dean of Faculty of Social and Economic Sciences at Comenius University in Bratislava. She obtained her PhD in international law and European law, and she also has a diploma from Cambridge University. She is author of many research papers, books. She is lecturer in many different foreign universities, like in the United Kingdom, Slovenia, Poland, Czech Republic, and Italy. And last but not least, I am welcoming Rajko Uskoković, who is Vice President of Montenegrin Pan-European Union since its establishment in 2016. Currently, he is director of French company Valgo for Montenegro and Balkan countries. He is dealing with projects for environment and ecology. He also worked as general coordinator for the United Nations projects in Montenegro. He served for 10 years in Paris as Director General of Montenegrin Airlines. And I would also like to highlight that he is expert for transport and infrastructure. That's all about him. Okay, so back to our topic, or to the question of the future of Europe. Since we are talking about the future, we can basically do nothing else than to predict a few things. I would like to start with 4 predictions that were made in 2016 by a Belgian think tank, according to which the European Union of tomorrow will be defined by more integrated foreign policy, the end of the euro, a more complete single market, and more realpolitik. So basically my first question to the panelists is whether they agree with this statement or not. And in general, how would they describe the future of Europe, or how they imagine the future of Europe? Let's start with Rajko.
Thanks, dear Annamária. I would like to thank also the host of this great event to bring us in this monumental building, which is excellent, and give us the choice really to speak about nice things, what will be in the future in the Europe. As you probably know, Montenegro is a country in the southeast of Europe with 600,000 inhabitants, and we as Montenegrinian Pan-European Union, we are a young organization which was established 2016. The most of our members are the young people, what we are proud on, and also what we would like to emphasize, the main goal of our activities is to promote European standards and European democratics in all this our area. Firstly, we would like to make excellent cooperation with our neighborhood, but after, of course, with other European countries. Montenegrin Pan-European Union, even though it's a very young organization, has obtained 2 projects of the Jean Monnet. One project is communicating the Europe, and another one is a sustainable agenda for UN 2030, EU 2025, about what we will speak later. We see Montenegro as part of the Europe, and I would like just to emphasize that Montenegro officially has applied in 2008 for EU, and 2012 we signed this accession application. So far we opened 35 of 33 chapters of European Union. 3 are closed, and we hope the last one will be open very soon. In December 2018, Montenegro has opened this chapter, which is the most difficult for us, regarding the environmental and climate changes. It is not only a big challenge for us, it's also for Montenegro the most expensive one. Montenegro is, let's say, in the region, leader of this European integration, and many countries that are in our neighborhood can see that Montenegro is a real pattern to be let's say, recognized as the country which should show how to approach to the European standards. We have, let's say, also very good position in all regional organizations. We are recognized by all international bodies, and now is then for us next step to promote our culture, scientific and economical growth. We hope that it will go on our way. We as Pan-European members are on the way to support this idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Professor Zhaloba.
Guten Tag, ich freue mich heute. Hört man? Aha, funktioniert. Ich freue mich heute an der heutigen Diskussion teilzunehmen. Die Kollegin, die aus Georgien stammt, am vorletzten Panel hat gesagt, dass es schon einen Unterschied in der Diskussion, in der Form der Diskussion hier momentan gibt, wie es im Vergleich zu dem, wie es vor 10 Jahren war. Bei der Vorbereitung zur heutigen Diskussion habe ich etwas als Professor gefunden. Verstehen Sie, jeder Professor bereitet sich sowieso ein bisschen zu einer Diskussion. Und da habe ich festgestellt, dass in den 90er Jahren des vergangenen Jahres und im ersten Dezennium des aktuellen Jahrhunderts hat man viel über die Perspektiven Europas, besonders über die ganz einzigartige Erscheinung in der Weltgeschichte, die EU, diskutiert. Ein gemeinsames Raum zu schaffen, aber nicht in der Form traditionellen Staatsexpansion, sondern umgekehrt. Nationale Staaten begannen sich an einem Teil ihrer Staatssouveränität zu verzichten, um etwas Neues, postsouveränen, ganz postmodernen zu schaffen. Solche Autoren wie zum Beispiel Amerikaner Joseph Weiler, seine Monographie The Constitution of Europe, Glyn Morgan, The Idea of European Superstate, Andrew Moravcsik, The Choice of Europe, britische Diplomat Robert Cooper, The Breaking of Nations, sprachen ganz andere Ära in der Staatssouveränitätsentwicklung, Ära des Postsouveränität, Ära des Postmodernismus, aber noch damals, als noch einige mit der Geschichtsende gerechnet hatten, merkte Glyn Morgan in seiner Monographie The Idea of European Superstate, dass der Erfolg des postmodernischen Entwicklung der EU-Institutionen nur in dem Fall möglich wäre, wenn die außenpolitische Situation an den EU-Grenzen und die verantwortliche Weltordnung es zu ermöglichen. Jetzt ist es schon klar, postmodernisches europäisches Existenz mit vielen Postsouveränität, Postwahrheiten, Postpolitikern und Postpolitikerinnen, Postmänner und Postfrauen etc. nur dann möglich wäre, wenn die anderen Teile der Welt bereit wären, das anzunehmen, zu akzeptieren. Es ist nicht der Fall. Europa muss akzeptieren, dass es und seine Zivilisation zwar einzigartig sind, aber nicht universal. Noch dazu hat sich so lange mit der Verbreitung der europäischen Prinzipien irgendwo in der Welt hat sich beschäftigt, dass es verpasste, wie eine Gefahr entstand, europäische Prinzipien in Europa zu verlieren. Jetzt für Europa entstehen wenigstens meiner Meinung nach zwei wichtige Herausforderungen aus seinem internationalen Umfeld: China und Russland. China ist heute eher eine wirtschaftliche Herausforderung. Russland ist wirtschaftlich kein Konkurrent für Europa, aber es ist ein Gegner, das ganz bewusst ist, was für eine Gefahr für das politische Regime in Moskau entsteht, wenn an Grenzen Russlands ein vereinigtes Europa mit der reformierten, nach europäischen Prinzipien Ukraine existieren. Deswegen sind verständlich alle Maßnahmen, die Russland schon gemacht hatte, wie die Einmischung in die holländische Volksabstimmung im Jahre 2016, die Unterstützung allen euroskeptischen Politikern in Europa, Interesse an der Verwirklichung des Projekts Nord Stream 2 etc. In diesem Zusammenhang wollte ich zum Schluss zwei Bemerkungen machen. Erstens, das Jahr 2019 ist in vielerlei Hinsichten für Europa und für die Ukraine sehr wichtig. Für Europa, viel besprochen schon, ist das Jahr der Wahl ins Europaparlament. Russland hat ein großes Interesse daran, nämlich es wollte in dem neu gewählten Europaparlament so viel wie möglich Euroskeptikern zu sehen. In der Ukraine haben wir heuer die Präsidentenwahl im Frühling und die Parlamentswahl im Herbst. Russlands Bestrebungen waren und sind, die politische Macht in der postmaidanen Ukraine als illegitim zu präsentieren, als Land, wo Nazi oder Faschisten an der Macht sind und überhaupt die Ukraine als ein Failed State im Europazentrum zu zeigen. Deswegen bin ich überzeugt, dass Russland alles weiter tun wird, um die Idee eines vereinigten Europa, ganz zu schweigen über die Idee einer modernen europäischen Ukraine zu diskreditieren und die Situation in diesem Raum zu destabilisieren. Und zweitens, wenn jemand meint, dass es heute der Krieg in der Ostukraine nur ein Krieg um territoriale Souveränität ist, dann hat er eine falsche Meinung. Es ist ein Zivilisationskrieg. Und im Unterschied zu den letzten 500 Jahren geht es nicht um die Expansion von Europa, es geht um die Verteidigung der europäischen Welt vor der Aggression der russischen Welt. Das ist meine Meinung heute. Und wenn Sie mich fragen, wie ich Zukunft von Europa sehe, da sehe ich diese Zukunft in der Zusammenarbeit zwischen Osteuropa und Westeuropa. Westeuropa hat gute Erfahrung, hat Stärke genug und Osteuropa hat hat Interesse an der Neuigkeit, ist sehr lebendig und Osteuropa ist neugierig. Und das kann man zusammenbringen und wirklich in einem vereinigten Europa wirklich ein starkes Europa zu finden. Danke vielmals.
Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to Lucia.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you very much for invitation and for having me here for this discussion. So the question of the future of Euro, as you quote, or the Europe without the Euro, I cannot imagine in relation to the economic interconnections between different actors and between the countries. This is one of the strengths which connects the countries and which helped a few years ago when we faced the financial and economic crises. And it's one of the engine which accelerate the development on the common market. So the future of Europe, as I can see it, is in, and I can sign what you already said, is to cooperate, to make the Europe strengthen where it is enough strength and where it can develop the deeper dialogue, like in the free movement of persons, in a free movement of services and goods, and hopefully also in free movement of capital. This is something which is still lasting. And of course, Europe should be more heard in international relations. We have the capacities, we have great people, we have the forces, I mean, like the personal, technical, the skilled people, skilled diplomats, who are able to operate on the highest international level. And we have great examples where the European Union was successful. When we are talking about development assistance to other countries, when we are talking about the international economic agreements. But of course we have the weaknesses in international politics because there are great players or big players which are heard more, like the United States, still higher voice and stronger voice of China and Russia and France in the Security Council, but also in the other international organizations. So I would like to say that we should, or I can see the future of Europe on one side in a strengthening what we have here in Europe, the strengthen or strong internal market. And what we have to do more is to be more heard and visible in international relations. Otherwise, the other countries which are running very quickly, like the BRICS countries and the US and other players, will just take the train quicker, and we will miss it at all.
Thank you. I think that we can all agree that basically similarly to how many experts, observers, European politicians and also citizens of Europe feel, Europe nowadays is having or facing extraordinary times. And this extraordinary time puts a great pressure on Europe, both from inside and outside. Basically, this is something like an accelerator of the future of Europe. One of my questions to the panelists is how do you think or how do you feel this type of crisis or extraordinary time that Europe is facing now is different from the previous crises that Europe already had or Europe already faced? Here I would like to add one thing, which has already been mentioned, that is political globalization, which I think personally that is a big threat to Europe. So something that is more than economic globalization. So it's not, I would define political globalization as something like a quest for the ruling of the world. And basically this type of political globalization has a big threat to Europe, because Europe has to defend somehow its values and its lifestyle. And so this is one of the threats that Europe has to conquer somehow. So my second question is whether you agree with me or not that political globalization is something like a threat to the future of Europe. Rajko, please.
Yes, thank you. I agree, and I would like also to add to my colleague Lucia regarding the euro. We are in Montenegro, not part of European Union, of course, but we have using euro. So let's say we are starting in advance to prepare for European standards, and let's say for our economy, which is not big because we are, as I said, 600,000 people. But this is very important for us to have euros and to have experience with the European common currency from the start. So it means that all this structure reforms that we are passing with the euro. So that is easier and let's say shortcut that we can achieve. That is one of let's say advantages that Montenegro had. And from another point of view, as you mentioned, it were many crises since 1990s, when in this region of ex-Yugoslavia war broke out. We were in different societies, but in Montenegro the situation was totally politically stable, and now is, as I mentioned, a leader in the region. And we are doing our best to harmonize all this attitude with the region. Because without this harmonization, firstly in your neighborhood, and then let's say in the second cycle, you cannot approach and you cannot see European way. Many crises that are already passing are, let's say, avoiding Montenegro, especially this big migration crisis. And also what I would like to ask the audience and all of us, if we are speaking today of the Europe and about the Union of the Europe, what is for the moment the capital of Europe? Is this Brussels or it is Lampedusa? What is more important city for Europe today? That is, let's say, my...
Is the question to the audience?
Yes.
So, what do you think? Yeah. Please, the gentleman in the second row.
As a Belgian, of course, I have to say Brussels. Well, you could also ask a question, which other city would be more important? Would it be Strasbourg or would it be Luxembourg? Because according to the treaties, Strasbourg is one of the most important cities. But of course, Lampedusa is a very important place. It has a very important value, specifically in the press when they communicate about the migration issue, because it was actually the first time where this issue got really a human face. So if you think about external policy, then of course you could say Lampedusa in that way.
I think I would say that the capital of Europe is Brussels, but the gate of Europe is Lampedusa. And the question is, which one is the leader of Europe, the gate or the center? Professor Zhaloba, the floor is yours.
Ohne Tor kann man zum Zentrum nicht kommen. Und ohne Zentrum gibt es kein Tor. Also ich meine, Tor dann ist nicht funktionell, wenn es nicht irgendwo führt. Ja? Das ist zusammen und das kann man nicht sozusagen Gegensatz zu einen Gegensatz machen zwischen diesen zweiten Begriffen und zwischen diesen beiden Städten. Und ich meine, gerade in dieser Vielfältigkeit ist Stärke von Europa. Erstens. Zweitens, die ganze Geschichte von Europa ist die Geschichte von verschiedenen Krisen. Und die EU-Entstehung war auch immer mit Krisen verbunden. Wenn wir an ganz kurze Geschichte, also nicht lange Geschichte, uns erinnern, noch in den 60er, 70er Jahren des vergangenen Jahrhunderts gab es große auch Probleme. Wichtig war, dass in seiner Geschichte hat sich Europa gelernt und konnte diese Krisen schon in einer offenen Diskussion, in Dialog zu lösen. Das wollen wir weitermachen. Das ist sehr wichtig für mich. Und wenn wir über eine politische Globalisierung sprechen, das ist ein Faktum, dann müssen wir dazu wirklich ein starkes Europa haben, um in diesem globalisierten Welt unseren Platz zu verteidigen und unsere Interesse zu verfolgen, finde ich. Danke.
Thank you. Lucia?
Thank you. And thanks again for, for speaking of professor, because this is something which we somehow lost on our way. As you mentioned, the previous crises were somehow connected with economic issues, and we were able to settle it quickly because there was a big impact on everyone. But right now we are facing the crisis which is based on, or is very many times called crisis of values. And that's the question, because when the European Union was built, we were quite clear that what we want. Yeah, we had the plan. We had a plan A, to have a peace, to have a prosperity, to have a sustainable countries which are based on common values. Yeah? And once we achieved somehow these values, we don't have war, we are in a quite sustainable environment, the countries were cooperating, there was a fall of the regime in the Eastern Europe, the Eastern European countries became the members, and then there was the question, like how are we dealing with all these issues? And then, do we have plan B, how to develop, how to establish and cooperate in a so high number of member states to achieve the consensus? And you can see that the consensus is a little bit easier to be achieved in these economic issues, but harder in political issues, because we have a different understanding of values which are named in the treaties, but are not quite perfectly and precisely explained. Everyone is talking about solidarity, about the rule of law, about the democracy, about the human rights, but we have to look on our face in the mirror. We everyone understand what are the human rights? If yes, why we have so many claims and applications to international courts? If we are talking about the rule of law, why we are facing the crisis and the legal crisis in the many member states? Yeah? When we are talking about the solidarity, are we really solidar, not only in the economic manner, but also in a human manner? We are able, as a European Union, to serve as a solidar actor in case of the earthquake, in the case of humanitarian crises. We are building bridges and industries in the developing countries, but we are not able to be solidar to each other in the European Union. So what we have to do is to come back to the table, to have an open discussion about what we understand and whether we still have the same understanding of the values upon which the European Union is based. So once we clear the table, then we can again come and build upon these values at all.
Thank you. So if we are talking about values, one of the most important value is identity. I would like to ask from the panelists, how would you define European identity? Whether you define it differently from national identity, and basically, what are those values, according to you, that form the basics of European identity? And just one addition to this question. The very first thing that I bumped into when I was searching on the internet what European identity means was a survey carried out by Eurobarometer last year in 2018. And basically, according to that survey or that research, huge majority of Europeans, almost 80%, defined cultural heritage as something of the most basic value that they can mention. So basically they told that statues that they see on the streets or in the neighborhood where they live gives them very much the impression of being European. The poems that they can read in their mother tongue, the poets that are famous Europe-wide, it's also some kind of reassurance of Europeanness. So, yeah, European identity.
I would like just to say, when we are speaking about identity, I was on my master's degree in China. So for me, it was very strange when I saw the world map and I saw China in the middle. Because in our old school, there always is Europe in the middle. Am I right? And I asked, of course, Chinese professor, what is this? And they were explaining on Chinese. When you say China, it's when you make a translation, it's Chunggo, it's center of the world. So China has identified and China has identity a long time ago. We, as European, we should do the same because I think the European heritage, European culture, European traditions is something that cannot be compared with anything in the world. When you are if you want to be tourist and if you want to pass by Europe, you need 2 or 3 lives to visit all this heritage which is in Europe. So instead to promote this cultural heritage, instead to promote these, let's say, attractions, we are neglecting that. That is not good for Europe. That is not good for Europe. For my country, let's say, today in Montenegro, we have a lot of monastery, a lot of church, and some people of Montenegrinian, they don't know for them. The people from European Union coming to see this heritage, and we don't know for them. I think, unfortunately, the similar situation is in Europe. The people in Europe, they don't know what they have. And how we can have our individual identity if you don't know what we have in our possession. So I think that education that is great in Europe, and the people from other parts of the world are coming in Europe to be educated, should more be concentrated about European education and European identity. Because if we cover our European identity as the main goal, we can find this identity as the main achievement for all of us. So it means that my message is we didn't still finish with European identity. We should still build up our identity because we have still job to be done.
Thank you. Professor?
Danke vielmals. Ich muss auch zustimmen, dass wir die gleichen Prozesse momentan in der Ukraine auch haben, als nach dem Interesse nach der Außenwelt, wie es in den 90er Jahren es war, als wir noch vor 91 hinter diesem eisernen Vorgang waren. Da war sehr interessant, andere Länder zu sehen. Und damals hat für mich Österreich, Deutschland, alle anderen Länder entdeckt. Und jetzt entdecken wir für uns die Ukraine und auch diese europäische Wurzeln, die wir in unserer Geschichte gehabt hatten, welche auch künstliche Bauwerke wir haben in der Ukraine, die in europäischem Stil gebaut hatten. Es stimmt. Also ich kann das bestätigen, wir haben gleiche Prozesse auch in der Ukraine. Und hier im Saal sitzen meine Studenten, mit denen ich im ersten Semester über die Zukunft der Ukraine diskutiert habe. Und wir haben gesprochen, was für ein Zivilisationsmodell für die Ukraine fähig ist, für die Ukraine eine gute Zukunft zu garantieren, zu entwickeln. Und es ist klar, europäische Zukunft. Ja, chinesische Welt ist chinesische Welt und chinesische Vorstellung. Andere Zivilisationsmodelle sind irgendwo, aber für diese Menschen, die daran glauben, aber wir glauben an diese drei Hügeln, in Athen, in Rom und in Jerusalem. Ja? Und wichtig ist, gerade für solche Länder wie unsere, die wieder ihre Identität entdecken, sich zuerst als auch Ukrainer zu präsentieren, aber in breiterem Sinne, im Sinne europäischen Identität mit den Wurzeln, über welche gestern Laris Kaiser gesprochen hatte. Ja? Und deswegen bin ich sicher, dass gerade, was ich gesagt hatte, diese Zusammenarbeit zwischen dem Osteuropa und Westeuropa sehr gewinnbringend ist. Und ich meine, es ist schwer zu diskutieren, was für eine Identität ist. Die Identität beruht sich an ganz bestimmten Prinzipien und gemeinsamen Werten eigentlich, worüber wir schon gesprochen hatten. Danke.
Thank you. Now I will give the floor to Lucia.
Thank you. So, yeah, European identity is something which is always under the question whether we have the European identity, one, or we have 28 different identities, which are the European ones. And I think that we are still in the process of building, right? Because we have foundations on which we can build the identity. Building the identity is a process. It's nothing like we can have in a moment because there are different sovereign states, but we have common history, yeah? We have a common continent, so it means we have some kind of also rules. As you mentioned, I'm a lawyer, so the continental Europe is based on the Roman law, so we have also this kind of a root, something common. And we have also the common understanding and trust in each other, because the project of the European Union is connecting more and more countries. It's lived more than 60 years, and it's still interesting, as my colleagues already said, for Montenegro, for Ukraine, and for the others. So it means that we have the values which are common to us, and if we just only translate these common values, common history, common interests, then we are talking about European history, European interest, and European values. So it means that the European identity is nothing just a unified system, but it's the system which respects the individual languages, individual minorities, trust between the nations, minorities, and the different cultures. So we have to be very precise, and we, I suppose, cannot somehow compare, like you mentioned, China. It's just a one-nation state with the Europe, which is the European Union, containing 28 nations and more nationalities and minorities. But still, I suppose that the European identity is the process, and we have the foundations on which we can build, and of course, we can present it. If you go, for example, as me, coming from a very small country in the middle of Europe to South America or to Africa, and they ask me, where are you coming from? And I say Slovakia. More or less like 90% will not know from where I'm coming. So what's the next step? I say Europe, yeah? And then they know. So it means that we have something which is perceived by the others that we are Europeans. And those are these common interests which should join us and not differ us in the positions. So the European identity, I think, as a project which should be still working on and which should be achieved, not like the status we once achieved and we are satisfied that it's done in the European politics.
Since we are talking about identity, I think all three panelists mentioned that we have to go back to the roots, so we have to define ourselves somehow. In the second panel, it was mentioned during the morning session that basically the founding fathers, especially Robert Schuman, would be very surprised if he would now go to the European Parliament. One of his most famous statements or sentences is that Europe would either be Christian or nothing. How do you feel about this sentence? So how would Robert Schuman feel about today's Europe? Rajko, please.
Thanks. As you know, big Ottoman Empire, which was going toward Europe in 13th, 14th century, was stopped in the Balkan area by people who are Christian. Still, those people, Christian people, are living in our country, and those people who are now in this region really feel Christianity. It means, of course, that they are proud on the religion, but of course they are not they are not in position to neglect other religion. Only in the first way is Christianity and protect themselves as Christianity. Regarding, let's say, visits of the foreigner tourists when they are coming in Montenegro, when they see some churches or monastery from 11th or 12th century, they are surprised. They are really surprised because they were thinking in this part of Europe there was no such big achievements a long time ago. So it means that Montenegro was always part of the Europe by this Christianity. So we are very proud of that. And through the history, we had, let's say, a lot of attacks that were stopped in our territory. And this was, and this is still in our history, in our songs, in our books, and we will not forget this history. That is sure. So it means if Robert Schuman will see what is in Montenegro, he will be proud of this Christianity.
Thank you. Professor Zhaloba, please.
Wahrscheinlich in Montenegro würde er sich wohlfühlen, aber nicht ganz in Westeuropa wahrscheinlich, wie ich das beurteilen könnte. Aber er war ein kluger Mann und deswegen meine ich, würde er Ihnen zustimmen, dass Europa in einem Prozess ist. Dieses Prozess geht ganz offen und nicht gleichgültig für Europäer. Und deswegen diskutieren wir heute darüber. Deswegen suchen wir die Lösungen für die Probleme, die für Europa momentan entstanden sind. Deswegen wollte ich sehr hoffen, dass er das begriffen würde, dass es ein Prozess ist und die Voraussetzungen, die zu seiner Zeit waren, ganz anders heute sind. Aber Europa ist lebendig, sie versucht, seinen Platz in der heutigen Welt zu finden, sich weiterzuhalten und meinte, dass Europa durchbringt, was momentan für Europa ein Problem hat, meine ich. Haben Sie verstanden?
Yes, I think so, yes. So now I will give the floor to Lucia.
Yeah, not so much commenting this, but I suppose that Robert Schuman, like years before, had not idea how much this project can develop, because originally it was the, let's say, regional initiative of the economic character. But today, as we can see, we are on some way of very close cooperating states. I don't want to say like a organization. It's not the organization at all. It's not the federal state, but it's something very, very special. And on one side, I suppose that he will be proud of us, what we managed to have. But on the other side, he will be very surprised how we are misled in some areas. We are not able to govern what we have good governed on the national level, but are not able to make the consensus on the European level. We have a different speeches on European level and on national level. You can see that sometimes leaders are saying something different in Brussels and then coming home and they use the different rhetorics. So I think that maybe he was not so much aware what he found when he did it, but his message was quite clear. The cooperation is better than fighting. The dialogue has to prevail any misleading. And if we want to live on this territory of the Europe, we have to cooperate and not fight. We have to try to use the negotiations. And of course, it's very hard to achieve consensus when there is more and more members and more actors. But it's a better way, and we know it from the international community, that the fight never settled any issue, just make the things worse. So the original idea of Schuman was to cooperate, to prevent the fight. And what we are doing in Europe right now, we are fighting. We are not using the arms, but we are fighting between us and not cooperating. And this is something which should be changed in different ways, by open dialogue, by teaching and training young people, by being honest to each other, and by really negotiating what is the aim we are working on, instead of how we can individually profit from the process and from the concrete output.
Thank you. When we are talking about values, identity, dialogue within Europe, basically we are all talking about the same thing that also the founding fathers have mentioned, that basically Europe has to be open to hear the voice of the citizens. And when we were a little bit discussing before this panel or before this session, and I asked the panelists what is their field of interest, or what are those topics that they would really prefer to talk about. Basically, everybody mentioned the fact that citizens need to be given some kind of tool to make their voice be heard. And one of these tools that we have detected is the Citizens Initiative, where basically citizens through different initiatives can make their voice be heard. One of this form, how citizens can urge the European institutions, especially the European Commission, to take action, is this Citizens Initiative, when they gather at least 1 million signature and they raise awareness of a certain question, and they can highlight problems and push the European institutions towards making action. So how do you feel about these initiatives? Basically, from the point of view of Hungary, recently there was one initiative which played a very significant role. This was the Minority Safe Pack. which affected Hungary for a really big amount, since there are many different minorities, many Hungarians who live outside the mother country, and this type of initiation would give big protection to minorities. But there are many different topics who fall under, or which fall under the umbrella of citizens' initiative. So what is your opinion about this tool that gives people a bigger voice, which can be a tool for shaping the future of Europe? Yes, please.
Thank you. What ordinary citizen need from all of, let's say, leaders or from all institutions is honest and sincere. I think that this big question are the people who are giving, let's say, who are giving instructions, are they honest toward their other people? If those people who are giving instructions and rules, if they are so open, even they are so wide, and they are giving all this information without anything what is behind, what is a real point, I think the citizen in Europe will have one very nice and very smart and ordinary life. But I think, unfortunately, no. Some of those people, let's say, especially those politicians, they prefer to speak nice, to speak very open, but behind each of the words, it's something what is not clear for ordinary citizen. So I think the ordinary citizen should do the same, but in the opposite way. Even though those leadership people are not people who open and honest, the citizens should be very open and very honest. In this case, from my point of view, this leadership will say, okay, I didn't tell true once, twice, thrice, third time, but from the other side, always I heard true. Let me change my way. Can I speak now as they are speaking? So I think we as ordinary citizens of the Europe, we should only keep this way. We should be honest and we should be sincere. And all our initiatives should go in this way. And this is only a right way to change, let's say, this situation which is now in this position that cannot be resolved.
Professor Zhaloba.
Danke für eine interessante Frage. Ich werde auch aus der ukrainischen Erfahrung sprechen. Einerseits haben wir heute, das merken alle, eine gute Zivilgesellschaft und eine gute Bürgerinitiative. Dank dieser Bürgerinitiative konnten wir die Zeiten 2014, 2015 überwältigen. 2014. 2012 ist das Regulation die Bürgerinitiative. Nein, ich meine gerade die Situation in der Ukraine, dass wir dank der Initiative der Bürger, die plötzlich eine Verantwortung für ein eigenes Land bekommen hatten. Sie haben begonnen, an den Prozessen in der Ukraine viel aktiver teilzunehmen. Und als der Staat eigentlich nicht bereit war, die Ukraine für diese Aggression, die einfachen Menschen vieles freiwillig gemacht, diese freiwillige Bewegung, die entstand damals war. Aber andererseits, diese breite Teilnahme, gerade von allen Bürgern, ist es bedenklich, ob alle gut erfahren sind. Die Gefahren, die wir heute in der Ukraine haben, haben wir zwischen zum Beispiel zwei Generationen. Die Menschen, die aus der ehemaligen Sowjetunion stammen, die überzeugt sind, dass es egal ist, für wen sie ihre Stimme geben und bereit sind, für 50 Hryvnia weniger als $10 ihre Stimme zu verkaufen, das ist ja schon eine Gefahr. Und den jungen Menschen, die verstehen, wie wichtig ist, dass sie bewusst ihre Wahl machen. Deswegen bin ich sehr bedenklich, wenn wir gerade über breitem Spektrum Menschen sprechen, die an direkten Demokratie teilzunehmen.
So, if I can continue, not to fall you asleep, but to make and to demonstrate you how the European Citizens Initiative is working. So can you raise the hands who had participated on the European Citizens Initiative by signing any one of those which were running in the last 6 years? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 hands approximately from, let's say, 50, 60 persons. So you can see it's it's not so much used as it was foreseen, yeah? And just to give you the real picture, there were in 6 years initiated or submitted 68 citizens' initiative. Just 21 ran or fulfilled the formalities in the process, and at the end only 4 became to the legislative process. And the question can be, on one side, whether we are not enough active, I mean like citizens, because just to have 21 real prepared, or whether the process is convenient and enough simple for citizens to participate in it. And the first question, or the answer to the first question, is that we are quite active, but we are not so much aware of the processes and of the division of powers, competencies, the sovereignty division between the states and the European Union on one side. And on the other side, we can see that the process was really so much complicated that then the European Parliament and Commission proposed the amendment to this system. It was very complicated for people to participate, to register, to sign, to make it in electronic form, or in some spots, in some countries, in a written form, to provide so many information, personal data about the person who signed the petition, that at the end, we more or less can say that after first 6 years of the implementation of the European Citizens Initiative, we failed, because it's less than per mile from the overall legislation which was proposed by the European Commission. So on this side, I can see the Citizens Initiative as one of the tools, but proposed to make the European Union closer to citizens. But when we evaluate first 6 years, we can see it's not really working. Because just to have 4 from 68 and to have this amendment proposed already in December last year means that the process was so much complicated that the citizens were not in fact involved in the overall process. And this should be changed because the citizens' voice has to be heard through the national parliaments, through the European Citizens Initiatives, through petitions, as well through the output of elections, as we heard in the previous panels, because those people are serving, those in the official positions are serving to us, to citizens of the European Union, and this should be visible, not only visible, but also touchable, and we can, or we are entitled to see the output of their work, and we are also entitled to present the ideas for the regulation which are really in the citizens' interest, as my colleague from Montenegro already said. We are here to raise the voice in the areas we are interested in, and not to leave it only on the official program for the next 5 years for all these legislative proposals, but also to raise the voice in the areas we are interested in. And we can see that citizens are interested in the areas of environmental protection, climate change, the food quality, the services provided. And those areas are not so much of interest of the national states, because they have to change the infrastructure, they have to accumulate money to provide them, to build the infrastructure, to really guarantee the food quality, for example, to work on the protection of environment for the future generation, for the quality of the earth and the air in the moment. And those are the expenses they have to get to the system. And of course, it's not so much in the interest of the states, but it has to be interest of us. And we have a tool, and in the moment, the system was a little bit simplified. So I suppose that when we meet somewhere in the next 6 years, maybe, we can evaluate the second 6 years as a more successful than the first 6 years, with those small percentage of successful European citizens' initiatives. And that the more hands we raise when we ask the same question again. Thank you.
Thank you. Since I would like to follow the structure of the previous panels, I would like to give some time for questions from the audience. So it's basically the last round that I would like to start now. And since Lucia mentioned the upcoming 6 years, a very short time in the future of Europe, I would like to ask you, how do you imagine, or let's rephrase it, if we meet in 20 years, in what kind of Europe would you like to live in? Rajko, please.
First of all, we would like to live in the Europe which will have the same currency. Another option is to, when we are crossing the border without a passport, and without excuse, there is immigration crisis, there is financial crisis, just living as a normal people, than to live without the custom. So it means these three very big issues are in front of us. We should beat all of them. If we want to have one, let's say, big market, open market, not only for this financial and economical issue, but also for the freedom and for integrity of all of us, because without border we can survive. With borders, and if we strengthen the borders, which are now for 20 years, we will. I don't want to say, but we will speak. It was good idea. It was good idea. So if we want to keep going on, we should. As soon as possible, start to make administration and to make a real force to avoid all of this what we don't have now. Currency, borders, and custom. With this in the future, I don't see any big prospect for the Europe. You can imagine now, we as Montenegro, we are planned to be entering Europe 2025. And so far we have euro. You can imagine if in another 6 years they will say, okay, when you will enter in the EU, you should return. You should not have any more euro. You can imagine that confusion. You can imagine that confusion. Also, we are now passing in some countries of Europe with only with passport, without visa. Can you imagine if for 5 or 6 years to enter in France or Germany, we will need visa? Then that is obviously question why we joined this kind of association when it's worse than we had before. So I think these three topics are very important for all of Europe. don't to be pessimist. We should be optimist. We should be big optimist, bigger than even now, if we want to have great Europe.
Thank you. Professor Zhaloba.
Es ist mir als Historiker immer schwer, über Zukunft zu sprechen, wenn ich immer meinen wissenschaftlichen Blick auf die Vergangenheit mache. Erstens, ich bin überzeugt, dass nicht nur Europa, aber auch die Welt heute in einer Turbulenzphase ist. Und deswegen ist es wirklich schwer zu sagen, was in 20 Jahren passieren werde. Die Kollegin hat gesagt, Schumann hat etwas anderes vorgestellt damals und heute diskutieren wir über ganz andere Sachen, die er sich nicht vorgestellt hatte damals. Ich würde mich wirklich sehr freuen, wenn wir uns in 20 Jahren hier wieder treffen und gemeinsam über gemeinsame Probleme diskutieren. Das bedeutet, dass Europa bleibt, dass Europa sich entwickelt und in seiner Weise, wie es ihr gewöhnlich ist, verschiedene Probleme über die Diskussionen, über den Dialog lösen zu versucht. Das ist das Wichtigste. Bis sich die Situation entwickelt, der Kollege hat gesagt, ich kann das zustimmen, wir sollen optimistisch gesinnt sein. Aber meiner Meinung nach, die Situation ist wirklich zu ernst. Und wir müssen alles tun, um das Gemeinsames, das wir heute haben, wir für unsere nächste Generationen wirklich weiter leisten könnten, weiter übergeben, im guten Sinne dieses Wortes. Nicht nur mit Problemen, aber mit einem Teil Probleme, die wir heute gelöst hatten. Ja?
So, in 20 years, definitely in the European Union. So I believe in the project. I suppose that it's quite visible. However, we are facing different problems and challenges. I believe in this project because I see it as the only one solution to survive in this world where the economic is running, where the diplomats and politicians are still trying to get more and go higher and go faster and everything. So the European Union is the project which help to not only to connect the countries in the Europe, but also to make some smaller states with a strong background of the other states, with those who are a little bit weak because of the economy or different issues, with the partners, not alone in the world. So I believe in the Europe where the states will try to find, or where the states will looking for a solution and settlement instead of the leaving the others in the problem, instead of make the possibility to leave the European Union and trying to survive individually. So I believe in the cooperation, I believe in the settlement, and I believe that in 20 years the European Union will survive all these problems and challenges we are facing right now. But of course, I'm quite realistic in a way that we'll be talking about the different problems, about the different issues, about the different opinions on some concrete questions which will arise within the cooperation. So we will not be talking about probably migration, but we will be talking more about the GMO or the climate change. We will be not talking about the education, but we will be talking about the satisfaction of the people with the employment. So I suppose that the discussion is the way how to find a solution. and the European Union as the project will exist there in 20 years, and that we will find the way and the process how to survive the problems and how to find the mechanism to deal with any other, by discussion and by honest, as you already mentioned, because the respect is something which should be present in any discussion. It should not be only the arguments, but it should be the respect and the honest to the other side. Only in that sense, without any hate and without any fakes, we can try to find a solution. Thank you.
So thank you for the reflections on this very bright future and this very optimistic attempt to the future of Europe. And now I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. Please, the gentleman in the first row.
László Pálos from the Hungarian Paneuropa Union. If we look back the history, all empire after centralization sooner or later collapse. Should we delay or prevent it in case of the European Union? And how we can delay it, because I think to prevent it in the long range, it's impossible.
Are you asking it from a specific person or anybody who feels like answering the question, please?
That's a tricky question. How to delay the collapse? I don't think we are in a collapse. All. Yeah. Yeah, but after every collapse we have in a history, and correct me if I'm okay, there again comes some kind of a rise. Yeah, so we should be, after different collapses, aware that we can have the rise without the total collapse. And this is something which we are trying to do right now by the discussion and also following steps. We have to be aware that we are not only discussing, that's our academic or maybe more theoretical discussion, but that the politicians will do their job and make the decisions which will be implemented. Because we are here to give them or provide them the mirror, you know, like to give them some kind of evidence, to give them the ideas, opinions, but they have to take the action, because we don't need, I think, we don't need to go totally down to again start the way back, because this is how it works in the history, to get down and then start again to raise back. But the politicians still have the power. But it's not only the politicians' competence. Politicians have only the power and position if the citizens give them. So we are back on the starting line, that we should provide them the mandate, and provide the mandate to people who are ready to act and who are not only talking but implementing. Those who are implementing with the consensus, with the legacy and legitimacy behind them, and that we will see the results. If not, hopefully, and we will still have the elections, to withdraw them then from the position if they are not able to serve. Politicians are here to serve to us. So not to delay, but to properly select who will speak in the name of the citizens. This is the tool, I suppose, is the one which can only work and prevent the total shutdown.
Es stimmt, Sie haben recht, dass jedes zentralistische System sowieso erwartet einen Bruch. Ja? Und das wurde noch von Ilya Prigozhin in seinen theoretischen Modellen bewiesen, am Beispiel Thermodynamik, alles Mögliche. Aber wir sprechen momentan nicht über Zentralismus der EU. Wir sagen, die EU ist einzigartige Entscheidung, die noch nicht in der Geschichte gewesen war. Und wir versuchen gerade in unseren Diskussionen diesen Weg zu finden, wie wir diese Kontinuität nach gemeinsamen Lösung der Fragen weiterpflegen können, bei der Situation, als die Umfeld, die Probleme, die wir lösen müssen, schon jetzt sind. Wir können nicht lange dauern, wir sollen schon Antworten geben. Und gerade finde ich, in diesem Sinn ist unsere Diskussion heute, wie wir das bewahren können, unser Recht, unsere Meinung haben, aber trotzdem, wir müssen gemeinsam handeln, um diese Fragestellungen, die entstehen, heute gerade rasch zu beantworten. Und deswegen, meiner Meinung nach, gerade geht nichts, dass wir zu einem geschlossenen System kommen sollten. Gerade reden wir, dass wir dieses System offen halten müssen, aber bei den Herausforderungen, die heute in dieser politisch globalisierten Welt entstehen, da müssen wir schnell handeln. Das ist schon ein Unterschied zu den Zeiten vor 10, 15 Jahren.
Okay. First, the gentleman in the back. He was the first, and then to Mr. Oba.
Yeah, my name is Javier Bana. I was pre-accession advisor of the European Union to Bulgaria between 2001 and 2003. I heard the first mention this evening or this afternoon about China from Rajko Uskoković, hvala lijepo Rajko. I think that there is a very important question, a very important thing that has not been properly treated, in my opinion, on the case of China. For example, my question is, I will put first the question and then the example. My question is, what do you think about the role to be played by China in Europe in the coming years, especially in Mitteleuropa? Because the Chinese have created an initiative called 16+1, through which they are investing a lot of money in creating specific infrastructures. The example, when we built years ago a bridge in Bulgaria between the city of Vidin and the city of Calafat in Romania, it needed many years to be done. It was done partially with funds of the European Union. Still today, recently, a few months ago, the parliaments of Baltic states approved the Rail Baltica project for the European Union. It has taken around 20 years to be approved, just a new rail link between Estonia and Poland in standard gauge, in European standard gauge. 20 years. The Chinese are now building a new line between the port of Thessaloniki, Solun, and Belgrade, and into Budapest. And it is taking much little time. And in the case of, for example, Bulgaria, the country in which I was living for 3 years, a public-private company has already built the airport of Plovdiv, and they're building a strong infrastructure there to link by plane between the extreme west of China and the Balkans, and the nearest place in the Balkans in the European Union, which is Bulgaria, Romania, in this case Plovdiv. And they are doing all these in times that we account in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, where the European Union takes in times on tens of years. What is the role for China? Thank you.
Thank you. Hvala lepo. Very good question, and just I would like also to add on your story there. For example, in Montenegro, we are also building a highway, and this highway was, of course, open tender. It was public competition, and you know, Chinese company and Chinese bank, they gave interest rate of less than 2%. European companies, European bank, they gave 4.5%. This is 1 billion job. And what if you are prime minister of your country, which offer you would choose? So as our politicians said, they said, okay, we are for Europe, we would like to support of Europe, but on the right example, give us support. For example, this is one right example. All the budget of Montenegro is 3 billion of euro, and this project is 1 billion of euro. It means 1/3. And when you have such a big difference in the interest rate, you have no choice, you should choose the Chinese company. And another example, it's also in our neighborhood. One part of Croatia, which is on the seaside, it's interrupted a long time ago by Bosnia and Herzegovina. And European Union, they said it should be done bridge to pass directly from European Union. So, and do you know who builds this connection for European Union? Chinese. So it means they know how to do. They have, let's say, more than they need, especially these petrodollars, and they should invest them. I think that Europe doesn't need to see in China one competitor. The Europe should see in China and Chinese company one partner. Their philosophy, let's say, the experience and our knowledge should be made corporate. And without this, trust me, we cannot. We are too small to compete or to beat Chinese economy. But to be partner, it's ideal situation is now. Situation is ideal now. We need a lot of infrastructure project in the Europe, especially from this transport. And let's make a real condition to play the game with Chinese, but as partner, not as competitor. I think that you agree with me.
Wenn wir uns über China sprechen, dann sprechen wir auch über diese neue Initiative, die neue Seidenstraße. Ja? Und wenn wir an diesen ländlichen Teil von dieser neuen Seidenstraße erinnern uns oder sehen, dann geht es gerade dort, wo die Vater von der Geopolitik, ich meine Mark Kinder und Spikeman über Heartland und Dreamland gesprochen hatten. Und gerade diesen Teil bekommt China dank diesen Infrastrukturprojekten. Und dann, meine ich, muss man gut nachdenken, was davor entstehen wird. Auch Initiative 16+1 zum Beispiel.
And one more question, the last question.
Ich möchte fragen, oft kann man hören über verschiedene Nationen, über Egoismus. Ich wäre neugierig, wie meinen Sie, ob es gibt es Unterschied zwischen Großmächten und den Kleinstaaten des Egoismus. Ich meine eigentlich in dieser Richtung möchte diese Frage stellen, dass bei den kleinen Staaten gibt es eine sogenannte Selbstschützung.
You know, I'm not speaking in the name of the country, but I can say it from some kind of expert point of view, and this is something which we are facing in the debate, that we are somehow flowing in our positions, because you can see, and it's not only the example of Slovakia, it's the example of many countries in the European Union, that we are trying to take the best from the Europe. Yeah, so it means that when there is some good project, good initiative, we are in. But of course, we are asked why we are not in the same boat when we are talking about settlement of the migration crises, reallocation quotas, the solidarity with Greece, and so on. So we have examples where the country didn't act as the European on one side. On the other side, we are more or less always present when money are distributing because we found it as a benefit of this. I don't have answer why are we acting so egoistic, but I have some let's say, my own explanation, because we still, and it's maybe some kind of a bridge to the China question, we see the European Union more as the economic project and not as a political project, because we see more the benefits coming in euros to the bank accounts than the political, the shared values, the solidarity project where we are living together. Yes, we can see it also in relation to our partners. I mean, like, we are proclaiming and backing China because they are not protecting human rights, but the China is our economic partner. And then we have to value whether the business is more than the human rights, whether the benefit in the amount is more than values. And of course, it's some kind of a historic connotation. The European Union or the European communities were based as the economic cooperation. We cannot somehow just touch this root, this initial part of the cooperation. But we have to be aware what we are going to do and what we should achieve to build strong economic cooperation. And then we are not aware of human rights and rule of law and solidarity and all these values. Or whether we can, in a few years, maybe 20, more build this political part of the European cooperation. And what I can see right now is that politicians, also my country politicians, are more using the short targets, which are the economic targets. But I think that this is not the way how it can successfully survive, and how the European Union then still be the competitor or the partner to BRICS countries like China, India, Brazil, South African country, South African Republic, and so on. So I suppose that we should clearly, and then I coming back what I said at the beginning, we should clearly define what are our values, and we should build on these values. Otherwise, if we are not in agreement on these values, then left the political project and rely on the economic one, because the economic one is the one pushing politicians to the consensus, because they have to take the responsibility to their citizens, and this is very visible how they are successful when you mention the money with the euro or dollars at the end in the presentation. Any contribution?
Es gab und gibt und werden noch geben immer Egoismen. Die Einzigartigkeit der EU gerade darin besteht, dass man versucht, verschiedene Egoisten, was natürlich sind, zu einem gemeinsamen Basis zu nehmen und auf diesem Basis gemeinsames Handeln zu entwickeln. Und deswegen diskutieren wir darüber heute.
So now I would like to thank for the great contribution from the panelists and also from the audience. Thank you for staying here with us until the end. And I think I still have to give the floor to the organizers for the closing remarks.